Hello class. In this video we're going to continue with making this SketchUp model look a little bit better in this Photoshop by playing with the windows. One of the things that SketchUp does very poorly is generally rendering, but one of its weakest points is transparencies, and it has no reflection at all, which of course are both qualities of Windows. So I'm going to show you some tricks to make the Windows better. There are ways in other softwares that you can do to make Windows better, but quite honestly the trick I'm going to show you here is it's a fairly easy thing to do, and it looks pretty well, and sometimes is often easier and better looking than what even other softwares can do, in my opinion anyway. And so if you really look at a window in a daytime, this is one of the keys. Students always they don't think about windows, and they think they're either completely transparent or they're completely blue as the sky or this or that. The reality is windows often are dark and they're reflective more than they are transparent, at least during the daytime. In follow-up videos I might show you some tips and techniques to make an evening shot where you might see through and the window might glow, and those are a whole other set of rules. But in the daytime, like this image, they're dark and they're somewhat reflective, and of course they reflect the environment. So I'm going to show you what I would do to set that up here. And so if my glass is reflecting what's around it, then what I'm really going to just use is I'm going to use my background as a place to start. I'm just going to copy it and use that as some reflections. This is going to take a few steps, and I'm going to show you the way that I like to do it. Arguably there are slightly easier ways of doing it, but maybe they quite aren't as editable in the long term. So I'm going to show you the way I would do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to my background layer, because that's what I want to copy. And I'm going to go up to the square marquee tool here. I'm going to just select a rectangle around it because I added the white space on it. And you don't have to be perfect. You actually don't need it all. If you get a little white space, it's not going to be a problem. So I just did Edit Copy or Control C. And I'm going to do Control V or paste it, and it's going to make a new layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this layer all the way on top. Of course, it's going to make my rest of my objects disappear. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a mask on this layer to mask out the parts that I don't want. So I'm going to hit the mask button, which is this button right here. Right, and we see this thing comes up, and if I draw here, it masks out. A mask basically means if I do black, it's not going to show it, and if I do white, it is going to show it. So I'm going to actually want to mask out most of this area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off for now so I can see my building beyond. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace out all my windows, because I want to mask out everything except for my windows, where my windows are, so that way what's reflected will be this background. If you don't understand, just trust me, follow along the video. Anyway, to map out my windows, I might be able to use the oops, I got to use all layers, sample all layers. I might be able to use that, and I'm getting the layers pretty well. I'm going to hold Shift to keep selecting. If it happens that you don't get all the window, you might come here and use your polygon lasso tool and just trace it out. But it's going to take me a few minutes to get all my windows and select all my windows like this, so I'm just going to pause the video and go ahead and do that, not to waste your time. Alright, I've gone ahead and selected all my windows. Now for this mask, what I really want to do is I actually want everything except for my windows selected. So I'm going to do one of these select inverse or Control Shift I, and it looks like I have the window still selected, but I actually have everything around the window selected. I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask layer here. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. Let's see, why is it not letting me fill this? Oh, because probably, let me turn on my layer. Yep, there we go. I just had to turn on my layer, forgot. Right, so now it looks like everything's covered up, but watch what will happen here. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. But I'm going to make sure this says black. If it doesn't say black, just select it down and it'll be there. I'm going to say OK, and boom. Now I see everything, and I just see that my background image through this. Now this isn't set yet. This isn't the final step, because now it just looks like I have a transparent building. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I go back to my regular layer by clicking out here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Move tool. I'm just going to, whoops, actually I made a mistake. The first thing I want to do is uncheck this link as well. That little link, see this little link coming on and off? I want to make sure it's off. That way I can move my background image to really reflect whatever I want. And the reality is if I have a reflection, I might also try, and there will be nothing wrong with going to transform and flipping it horizontally, and so you sort of might reflect a different plane out here. So I sort of like this reflection here. And now it still is looking too bright because the other issue is that windows usually are on the dark side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to go to adjustments, and I might try various adjustments in here. I'll start with the easy one, which is brightness contrast. Of course, if I said if it's darker, I'm going to pull the darkness down. The reality is the contrast in windows are usually fairly high, so I might sort of pull them up a bit like that and say okay. And if I like that, I can stick with it. I can try other things. I can try it again. I could say, well, it's still not quite dark enough, or maybe it was dark enough, but maybe the contrast wasn't enough, or something like that. I can say okay. I can play around with other adjustments. I can go to levels or curves or exposure, which might give me a little more control. It takes a little bit of time to work out, so maybe I want my brights brighter here, but I want to sort of have more of a tone like that. I can actually make that darker, or do various things there, and I can say okay until I can get it set to where I want. You know, and so take time. You can play with it like that, and there might be some other effects you look at too. Just I'll try some more levels and see. I want to get those brights brighter because you know, somewhat bright there. You know, I'll go with that. Go with that. You might even take out. You might go, depending on how your image is, you might go to hue saturation and take the saturation down a little bit, which is going to make it more grayer. I'll go with that. I'll say, you know, that's a pretty decent Windows. Now, again, we're still going to do things to make this look even better, and we'll come back with a couple more videos, and there's still a lot of Photoshop to learn, but that's another big trick. Grass and those windows really start to sort of change the look of this thing. All right, see you next video.